Have you ever felt like nothing more than a shadow in your own family, constantly compared and fitting into everyone's mold? I'm Grace, the younger sister who's lived her whole life in my sister Isabella's spotlight. 3 years ago, I took the fall for her $3, $200 mistake, believing it was a lesson in growing up. Little did I know that moment would trigger a chain of tragedies: losing my job, losing my home, my family turning against me, and being trapped under legal guardianship for 9 long years. In today's video, join me as I revisit every twist of this ordeal, from that first sacrifice to the harrowing courtroom battle, and follow my journey to reclaim the freedom that was always mine. Chapter 1: Two Sisters, Light and Shadow, Under One Roof. I used to think my family was its own little universe where every law was rewritten to serve just one person, my older sister Isabella. If you've ever lived in the shadow of a golden child, you'll know exactly the feeling I'm talking about. You might laugh, but in my parents' eyes, Isabella was always the blazing sun, while I was just a faint moon, appearing only after everyone had fallen asleep, still dreaming about her. From a young age, I got used to family gatherings where every compliment, every round of applause was reserved for her. Isabella was smart, well-behaved, and drew attention wherever she went. As for me, I could only sit in silence, secretly proud of my B grades, because compared to the Golden Girl, they meant nothing. Every time my parents received my report card, it always came with, "Why can't you be more like Isabella? Why don't you try a little harder?" As the years passed, that gap only grew wider. By the time we reached senior year, the lines were clearly drawn. Isabella landed a highly coveted marketing internship at a major firm downtown. My parents threw her a little party inviting the whole family to brag about her accomplishments. I still remember standing in the corner that day, listening to everyone chatter excitedly about the brilliant future of the Golden Girl, while I silently counted down the minutes until I could return to my room, a place where no one mentioned me at all. Then a month later, it was my turn for good news. I got accepted into the art school I had dreamed of for years. My dad just nodded slightly and asked, "Have you thought about something more stable? Can you really make a living with art?" Grace, I just forced a smile. I was used to it by then. In their eyes, a passion for art would never be as serious as the numbers and big contracts my sister was already dealing with. Maybe you think I sound jealous, and you'd be right, I am. But I also accepted the truth: in my family, I would always be the second choice. Isabella didn't have to try. She would always win. Me, I had to work 10 times harder just to be considered not bad. My entire childhood, I tried so hard just to hear my mom say, "Well done." But those words never came. That sense of being out of place, like a guest in your own family, is honestly not something I'd wish on anyone. I used to wonder if I was just making a big deal out of nothing, or if I was simply too weak. But now, as I sit here telling this story, I know I'm not alone. So many people have grown up as the shadow in their family. And it's those small wounds, those careless comparisons that lit the fuse for the biggest tragedy of my life. The kind of tragedy that if I'd known was coming, maybe I would have chosen to stay the moon forever. Chapter 2: The Fateful Night. A plea I couldn't refuse. I remember that night so vividly, the night when everything began. Even now, I still wonder if things would have been different if I'd just said no. That night, I was curled up in bed, desperately trying to finish my math homework, my eyes heavy from a full day at my part-time job. Suddenly, my door burst open, hurried footsteps rushed in, and Isabella's tear-streaked face was illuminated by the hallway light. She had never come to my room at that hour before. If it wasn't something urgent, she would never set foot in Grace's territory. Before I could even ask what was wrong, Isabella flung herself at me. Mascara smeared, face flushed tears, and snot all mixed together. She looked both pitiful and strange. You have to help me, Grace. I messed everything up. For a second, I thought something truly terrible had happened, like an accident or a breakup. But no, the disaster she faced was she had maxed out mom's emergency credit card to the tune of over $3,000 just to buy some office clothes so she could fit in with everyone at work. I could barely breathe when I heard the amount. To me, $3,000 was a whole year's worth of part-time work, my entire future for college. But Isabella just sobbed, telling me everyone at the company wears designer brands. If I wear cheap clothes, what will they think of me? What will they think of our family? She gripped my hands tightly, pleading in the same voice I used to wish she'd use when we played princess as kids. Grace, please. I can't tell Mom. If she finds out, she'll make me quit my job and say I'm not mature enough, that I don't deserve this opportunity. I just shook my head and whispered, then just tell her the truth. It's not that serious. Mom will be mad for a bit, but she'll forgive you. But Isabella laughed, a bitter, hollow laugh. Are you crazy? You always think things are simple. Mom would never forgive me. But with you, it's different. She already thinks you waste money on all that gothic nonsense. If you take the blame, she'll believe it immediately. At worst, she'll scold you, maybe cut your allowance nothing as harsh as what she'd do to me. In that moment, I understood completely in this family. I was the safety net, the one everyone used to cushion their mistakes when things went off track. Isabella looked at me, her eyes both pleading and cold. She knew I wouldn't dare refuse, and I knew from that moment on, my fate would be sealed by a sentence that never truly belonged to me. Fine, I'll take the blame. The next morning, when Mom discovered the suspicious charges on the card, Isabella had coincidentally left early for work. I sat there in silence, taking Mom's yelling each word like a knife, stabbing what little pride I had left. She cut the card right in front of me, repeating over and over those silly bracelets, black rings, all that nonsense won't make you special, Grace. You're just making yourself look ridiculous. That was the day I officially became the culprit in my family's eyes, all because I loved my sister. And that was also the first day I truly understood some prices are paid for a lifetime just because you said yes once when your heart was too soft to say no. Chapter 3. The Price of Kindness. Years of darkness. I thought that taking the fall just once would be enough for things to blow over. Little did I know it was only the beginning of the darkest chapter of my life. After my mother's punishment, I became the symbol of disappointment in my family. My classmates whispered behind my back about the goth girl who burns through money while I filled out job applications for the nearby coffee shop and took on late-night shifts at the gas station on the corner. Sometimes looking at myself in the mirror, I hardly recognized the person staring back. Dark circles under my eyes, hands stained with coffee and gasoline marks still clinging to my neck. I was only 18, but I felt like I'd aged a decade. Back then, my days were chopped into tiny fragments. School in the morning, work in the afternoon, cramming assignments at night, then lying awake past midnight, wrestling with a loneliness I didn't dare share with anyone. Sometimes in my dreams, I still heard Mom's refrain, "Gothic won't make you special," and I'd wake up in the dark pillow, soaked with tears. Meanwhile, Isabella was living like she was in a soap opera. She'd come home from work carrying luxury designer bags bought with money I was breaking my back to pay off for her. She'd boast to Mom about fancy client dinners, about being praised by her boss, about her Diane von Furstenberg dresses and Jimmy Choo shoes, the kind of things I used to secretly long for, but always knew I'd never reach. Worse still, Isabella began to change the way she treated me. If she'd once felt a little guilty, now she treated me like a living life lesson for the whole family. Honestly, maybe this is actually good for you, Grace, she'd say when I brought up the money. At least now you finally learned some financial responsibility. I've lost count of how many times I bit my tongue and put up with it, thinking that as her sister, as family, I was supposed to bear it. One time I finally asked, "So, when are you going to pay me back?" Isabella just shrugged and replied, completely unfazed, "You should really thank me, you know." If it weren't for this, you'd never learn to be independent. In that moment, I was silent, feeling both humiliated and deeply regretful about my own kindness. I tried everything I could not to break, working 2 jobs a day, studying late into the night, freelancing as an illustrator for small shops on the weekends. But the harder I tried, the more I felt like I was swimming against a relentless current. Many times I wanted to tell my parents the truth, to explain that I wasn't the one at fault, but I never did. Part of me was afraid mom wouldn't believe me. Part of me just couldn't bear to be the one to shatter the illusion of a perfect family. Maybe to outsiders, I was just a rebellious, irresponsible kid who spent money recklessly. But only those who have ever had to pay the price for someone else truly understand sometimes the cost of kindness isn't just money. It's your whole youth. It's dreams being slowly strangled day after day. 3 years went by. I was still steadily paying off my sister's debt, still the sacrificial lamb whenever anything went wrong at home. And Isabella, my sister, was more and more successful, more dazzling by the day, as if every obstacle was just another stepping stone to her perfection. Only me every night coming home. I'd still ask myself, what's left for me after all of this? And how long until I finally dare to live my own life? Chapter 4. The golden girl turns her back. The younger sister becomes the family. Sometimes I wonder if I could turn back time. Would I be cold-hearted enough to look Isabella in the eye and say no from the very start? But that's life. The more you sacrifice for others, the more you become a target for fresh wounds, especially in a family like mine. Time went by. My sister soared higher and higher in her career while I sank deeper into the very shadow I'd created for myself. Every time the family gathered, Isabella appeared like a star, dressed to the nines, radiant smile playing the perfect big sister everyone admired. And me? I'd retreat to the back, quietly sitting at the corner of the table listening to stories of success that had nothing to do with me. It didn't end there. Isabella herself was always the one to slyly remind everyone about the financial lesson I had supposedly learned. She'd tell the whole family about my big slip, spending $3, $200 on useless things just to chase some gothic phase. She'd say it with a mischievous grin, as if telling a funny story, and everyone would burst out laughing like they were watching the highlight act at a party. I still remember the first time Isabella made me the punchline in front of the whole extended family. Our Grace is so thrifty now, she said, glancing over at me, but back in the day, you all know the infamous Gothic bankruptcy shopping spree. I forced a smile, pretending not to care, but deep down, I just wanted to disappear. As time went on, I became the target of endless. My younger cousins whispered behind my back, while the aunts and uncles looked at me with a mix of sympathy and disappointment. The final straw came at a Thanksgiving dinner when I merely mentioned needing to borrow more money to continue my studies, and Isabella seized the moment to teach me a lesson in front of the entire family. She spoke loudly enough for everyone at the table to turn and stare. You need to learn financial responsibility like I did. You can't just keep making mistakes and expect the family to forgive you forever. It was then I realized in my family's eyes, I had been cast as the chronic failure. Meanwhile, Isabella basked in her perfect child status, giving herself the right to criticize and belittle me whenever she pleased. There's a uniquely bitter feeling that comes with seeing your own sister, the one who once begged for your help, now flipping the script and turning you into a joke just to boost her own worth in the eyes of others. That feeling is humiliating, absurd, and so infuriating it nearly choked me. I should have stood up for myself long ago. I should never have stayed silent. But you know, in a family where truth is just party decoration, the one who dares to speak up is always labeled the drama queen. I had endured it for 3 years. Every mocking comment, every round of laughter, every disappointed look from my parents. But that day, as the sound of laughter rose up from my own mistakes, I knew it was time for me to speak out. It was time for the truth to come to light. Chapter 5. The Dinner Table. Showdown. Truth erupts. I used to think I'd always be just a shadow in this family story. But that day, right in the middle of everyone's noisy laughter, I felt every last limit inside me snap. There are moments in life when you have nothing left to lose, and in that moment you discover a strange kind of courage, a bravery born from humiliation and rage. Isabella had just finished her speech about my financial awareness in front of the entire family when I suddenly laughed. It wasn't a polite or social laugh, but a bitter, sharp sound, the kind that bursts out when you finally realize just how naive and spineless you've been. I looked at her, then at everyone around the table. My parents, the aunts, uncles, and all my cousins, eagerly watching, waiting to see what Grace the failure would do next. You're right. I started my voice steady, even as my heart pounded. But if we're sharing stories about financial awareness, maybe you should also tell everyone why I spent 3 years breaking my back to pay off debt. The table went dead silent. I pulled out my phone, hands trembling a little, but my eyes never looked away again. I opened a photo folder and scrolled through receipts. Diane von Furstenberg dresses, Jimmy Choo shoes, all kinds of designer bags, all paid for with mom's card, all purchased in the first 3 weeks of Isabella's internship. I read out each item, each shopping date, each transaction clear as day for everyone to see. Here you see this. That's the dress you wore when you got promoted at work. Those are the shoes you bragged about to mom for a week, saying you have to invest in success. And who paid for them? Me. Because 3 years ago, in the middle of the night, when everyone else was sleeping soundly, you came into my room begging me to take the blame. You were afraid of losing your job, of losing face, and I was just stupid enough to believe this family was fair. Isabella was speechless, her face shifting from white to red to ashen gray. My mother set her fork down, the clang of metal ringing out cold and sharp. My father just stared, struggling to process what was happening. The rest of the family looked at me as if they were seeing another daughter in the house for the first time. For 3 years, I worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs. I missed my very first art show, fell asleep at my own graduation from sheer exhaustion. Every penny I earned went to pay for the luxuries my sister, the family's darling, needed for her networking with the elite. And while I took the blame and the punishments, she came home every night dressed in designer clothes, playing the golden girl for all of you. No one could say a word. Isabella gaped like a fish out of water, stammering, I just wanted you to learn a lesson. I was doing it for your own good. But I didn't hold back anymore. I told everything those nights, working at the gas station, the mornings, skipping breakfast to save money, all those hours crying alone in my room because my own family had branded me the problem child. Right then, Uncle Richard, the one who had just raised a glass to toast the successful niece, sat frozen, and Aunt Martha looked at Isabella as if she'd just discovered a stranger in the family. My mom stammered, her voice shaking. Oh my God. We punished Grace. We made her pay every penny while the other one. She trailed off, unable to finish. I looked straight at my parents, at the whole family, feeling both liberated and bitter. All I ever wanted was for someone to ask, Grace, are you okay? But no one ever did. So today I'll answer it for myself. I haven't been okay. And no one in this family ever truly cared. I stood up, leaving behind the stunned whispers and wide-eyed stares. For the first time in my life, I felt truly seen, even if only in the middle of a scandal, in the deafening silence of a family dinner gone wrong. But I also knew when the truth is finally exposed, the wrath of those who've been sheltered by lies is even more brutal. And honestly, I had no idea that waiting behind that door was an entirely new nightmare. Chapter 6: Revenge? The height of tragedy. Losing everything. If you ever believe that when the truth comes out, everything will be clear and justice will prevail, sorry, but life isn't that generous. After my call out at the dinner table, I thought, Maybe I'd finally get to breathe easy. Maybe a little bit of justice would be returned to me. But as it turned out, I had only flung open the door to a new hell, one constructed entirely by my own sister. The next morning, I woke up feeling strangely light, as if I had finally shrugged off a burden I'd carried for 3 years. But before I could even savor that relief, my phone started ringing off the hook, almost 50 missed calls, most from the art school, some unknown numbers, and my mother. My inbox exploded with cold clip notifications, admission canceled due to suspicion of academic dishonesty, request for explanation regarding plagiarism. Please contact the disciplinary office immediately. I was stunned. Someone had sent evidence to my school, accusing me of stealing ideas from my portfolio, attaching doctored screenshots from Instagram, even a professional analysis of signs of plagiarism. In the middle of my spinning head, I got a text from Isabella. Learn how to protect your copyright next time. Don't share your passwords so carelessly. Learn about financial responsibility from your own experience. And that damned shrug emoji I'd always hated. That's when it hit me years ago. Isabella had helped me reset my account security, borrowing my phone and making sure she saved all my passwords on her device. I'd thought it was just sisterly kindness. Now I saw the truth. It was all part of a plan, a safety net for when she ever needed to destroy me. I rushed to my school, but it was too late. My records were frozen. My reputation ruined. Every effort of my youth turned to dust in an instant. No sooner had I left the campus office than I got a call from the coffee shop where I'd worked for 3 years, never late, never lost a dime. My manager's voice was ice cold. There's been an anonymous report about you stealing tip money, with details for every shift every day. For everyone's sake, you don't need to come collect your paycheck. We'll send it by transfer. I was in shock. First my school. Now my job. Everything I'd built was toppling like dominoes. I staggered home and called my mother, but she didn't answer. Finally, all I got was a text. I'm worried about Isabella. You really need to learn to take responsibility, Grace. And that wasn't all. Isabella also contacted the manager at the gas station where I worked night shifts, sending in evidence about theft and unstable mental health. I was immediately let go. My savings would barely last 2 months, not to mention the apartment. My roommate received a fabricated email about my history of theft and asked me to move out for everyone's safety. Within a week, I was left with nothing. All my personal accounts were locked out, every piece of my art portfolio photos, important documents wiped from my cloud storage. Isabella even filed a petition for financial conservatorship, claiming I was incapable of managing my own life, backing it up with all the evidence she herself had planted. I survived each day in a fog, sleeping in my car, showering at the gym, scraping by on spare change. Every night, staring up at the roof of my car, I asked myself, is this the price for speaking up? Was it worth it when the truth only got me isolation, slander, and the total destruction of my future? But worst of all was the betrayal by my own family. No one believed me. No one, not even my mother, the woman who used to hold me every night. She too was either silent or sided with my sister. Isabella had won, not just because she was good at manipulation, but because she knew how to exploit every crack in our family ties, every fear and weakness I had. The final blow came one morning when I received court papers. Isabella was officially petitioning to become my financial guardian, taking control of all my assets and legal rights out of concern for her sister's safety, mental health, and future. The whole world turned its back on me, and I, the one who thought I was strongest when I finally spoke the truth, was now nothing more than a name erased from my own life. Yet deep within that pit of despair, a tiny spark still burned. Maybe I had lost everything: family, friends, reputation, future. But if someone could spend a lifetime preparing for a silent war, then I could learn to fight back too, even if all I had left were my two empty hands. Chapter 7. Guardianship Secrets: The True Motive. Revealed. After everything that happened, there were nights I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, asking myself, why did Isabella go so far, so determined to utterly destroy me? Was it just for a bit of reputation, a bit of job security? Or was there something deeper behind it all? Only now did I truly realize my sister never did anything just out of emotion. For Isabella, everything was calculated, a plan set in motion long before. I started piecing things together in my mind. Why had she insisted on helping me reset my passwords and protect my accounts right after the credit card incident? Why had every email and document of mine passed through her hands? And why, after the big expose at the family dinner, did Isabella rush to file for financial guardianship as if every step had already been prepared? All the answers started to come into focus when I received a call from my distant cousin, Jake the lawyer, who'd handled Grandma's estate. He spoke in a hushed tone, as if afraid someone might be listening in. Grace, do you know about your grandmother's trust fund, $50,000 to whichever grandchild needs it most upon turning 25? The legal guardian is the one who decides who gets that money. Have you recently been sued over your ability to manage your own finances? I was speechless. $50,000, a sum that could change my life, and whoever holds legal guardianship would have full authority over it. Suddenly, everything made sense. For 3 years, Isabella hadn't just wanted to pin the blame on me. She needed to turn me into the unstable one, someone who needs protection, just as I was about to turn 25. I spent hours in the library poring over legal documents, reviewing Grandma's will. Everything matched up, as long as Isabella was recognized as my guardian. Before my birthday, she would have complete control over the fund. She could support me, meaning spend it on herself, and I'd lose all rights to it forever. I realized I was nothing more than a pawn in the game Isabella had been playing for nearly a decade. From the first time I took the fall, to every password reset, every financial tip, it had all served a single purpose: to seize that money and maintain her image as the savior sister, rescuing her troubled sibling in the eyes of the family and the world. The shame of betrayal slowly gave way to anger. I couldn't believe that the person who once called me her sister was willing to destroy my whole life just to satisfy her thirst for power and money. But right then, I also understood if I wanted to escape this cage, I couldn't rely on kindness anymore. I couldn't go on being the passive victim. I started reaching out to people who'd worked with Isabella, former colleagues, old classmates, even a college roommate named Emma, whom she'd once helped, only for Emma to be expelled later after being framed for plagiarism. I realized I wasn't the only victim. There were so many others Isabella had pushed into the abyss. The only difference was they'd either given up or chosen silence. Out of fear, no one would believe them. I decided I wouldn't be passive anymore. If this was a battle Isabella had been planning for years, I needed to learn how to fight by her rules. Because this time I wasn't just fighting for myself, I was fighting for everyone who had ever been a victim of a golden girl hiding behind the mask of family. Chapter 8: The Legal Battle. Fighting with no way out. Life sometimes feels like an endless courtroom where truth is just a weak card, and the one who knows how to stack the deck will always win, at least for a while. I entered this legal battle with nothing left to lose, but the deeper I went, the more I realized this system was never built to protect people like me. The guardianship hearing was held in a cold, sterile room under the scrutinizing eyes of lawyers, the judge, and of course Isabella. She showed up in a tailored suit. Her blonde hair neatly pinned her face, perfectly made up, just enough to radiate that devoted older sister look. She came armed with a thick file, dozens of pieces of evidence of my mental instability, doctored emails, fabricated messages, psychological reports she'd conveniently arranged on my behalf. I sat quietly, with my own thin stack of papers, a few scanned receipts, some brief recordings from people who'd also been victims of Isabella, and a letter confirming I had no mental illness except for acute stress response from family conflict. My free legal aid attorney was kind, but I knew even she didn't believe we'd win. Isabella performed before the court like an artist. She cried as she spoke of being heartbroken, watching her sister spiral, worried for Grace, who can't hold a job, is homeless, and always stirs up family drama. Sometimes she'd turn to me, her voice trembling. I just want what's best for you, Grace. I can't stand watching you ruin your own life. Her lawyer was sharp as a razor, guiding the judge through every piece of evidence. The times I lost jobs, all thanks to anonymous reports from whom it wasn't hard to guess. The email from my roommate about my history of theft, which Isabella had forced her to write. Cropped Instagram posts making me look unstable, ranting about a dark world. I tried to defend myself, but everything I presented was brushed aside. The recordings, sorry in this state. Both parties must consent. The blog posts exposing Isabella, just internet gossip, not admissible. Proof my accounts were hacked. Grace, you shared your passwords yourself. Bit by bit, I was backed up to the edge. The judge looked at me with a mixture of pity and doubt. My family, of course, sided with Isabella. Mom cried and begged the court to save her youngest daughter, while Dad just sighed, saying, "We all just want what's best for you." When it was my turn to speak, I could only tell the truth about being forced to change passwords, about that fateful night. I took the blame about 3 years of working myself to the bone to pay off my sister's debt. But in everyone's eyes, I was just a delusional girl blaming the world for her own failures. The only thing that kept me from collapsing completely were the quiet messages of support from Marcus, Emma, and other victims of Isabella. They sent encouragement, little bits of evidence, a forwarded email, a falsified financial report, an apology letter for not daring to testify in public. Slowly, I realized I wasn't alone. There was a tiny, quiet network of victims, and I was the only one willing to stand up. But in court, that meant nothing. The hearing ended with a cold verdict. Isabella was granted financial guardianship for 1 year, with a review after 6 months if there was no improvement. I was ordered to stabilize my work and housing, undergo mandatory therapy, all expenses controlled by Isabella. The $50,000 trust fund from Grandma now in Isabella's hands for Grace's welfare. I walked out of court feeling like I'd lost everything. My parents told me I should be grateful to your sister. If it wasn't for Isabella, you'd be out on the street. Friends slowly disappeared, afraid of the drama sticking to them. That night, I sat alone, scrolling through supportive emails from my little victim network. And in that moment, I understood. Maybe I'd lost in court, but if I gave up, Isabella would only collect more victims. And I refused to let that happen. I started making new plans quietly, gathering more evidence, rebuilding connections with those willing to speak the truth, even reaching out to the media, if only to a no-name blog adrift in a sea of misinformation. If Isabella spent her whole youth preparing for this game, then now I would learn how to fight by her rules. Chapter 9, Living in a Legal Prison, The Depths of Pain. The truth is, there are prisons that need no bars, no high walls. All it takes is a stack of papers stamped by a judge and signed by someone you once called family. I never imagined there would come a day when I lived in a free society, yet felt more suffocated and shackled than ever before. Those first months under Isabella's guardianship were an experience I'll never forget, and never forgive anyone for making me endure. Every bit of my income, from part-time paychecks to the occasional freelance art commission, was routed to an account Isabella controlled. She approved every expense, deciding how much I was allowed to spend on food, transportation, even toilet paper. Every week I had to visit the therapist. Isabella selected a woman who always looked at me with pity, as if I were some tragic clinical case to be studied. The questions never changed. Are you still experiencing negative thoughts? Have you ever thought about harming yourself? I knew that a single wrong answer would give my sister all the ammunition she needed to extend her guardianship over me indefinitely. I moved into a shabby boarding house, sharing a bathroom with nearly a dozen strangers. Every meal was instant noodles, hard-boiled eggs, and sometimes a bit of junk food bought with approved money. Art, the only thing that ever made me feel alive, was reduced to doodles on napkins, because Isabella decided art supplies are unnecessary for someone in psychological recovery. I worked at a call center, a mind-numbing job, but at least it gave me an excuse to leave the house. Or the people around me were the same. everyone running from something, each trapped in their own invisible cage built by society. I sometimes wondered in this city, how many people are like me, living legally properly within all the rules, yet hollowed out inside. Yet even in that darkness, I began to find a faint glimmer of light. Other victims of Isabella still messaged me quietly. They shared stories of how they'd gotten back on their feet, how they rebuilt their lives after being pushed to rock bottom. Emma, Isabella's former college roommate, sent me a long letter urging me to record everything, every rejection, every bank statement, every word from the therapist, every email from my sister. Just write it down. It might not change anything now, but one day the truth will need proof, not tears, she wrote. So I did. I hid my journal in places Isabella would never suspect, even sent scans to Marcus, the only person I trusted who had nothing left to lose. Even though I played the part of the perfect compliant victim in front of my family, I clung to a shred of identity, a silent rebellion in every page of my secret diary. Maybe I'd lost my freedom, my art, my dignity, and my future, but I never lost hope completely. Maybe it was only a faint spark in the long night, but in my lowest moments, I realized no one can ever take away my right to dream or my desire to claim my life as my own. I don't know when or if I'll ever get the chance to turn things around, but I swear if a door ever opens, I will no longer be the passive, obedient Grace. I will be the one who stands up not just for myself, but for everyone who's ever been locked in a legal prison built by family and the system. Chapter 10. Counterattack and Liberation. Freedom that inspires time in that legal prison crept by like torture, but with each passing day, I learned more deeply. Compliance doesn't equal surrender. Some battles must wait for the right moment, and I had become more patient than anyone. I continued to play obedient Grace in front of Isabella, and the court arriving to work on time, submitting every receipt, listening politely to the therapist's empty reassurances. But behind their backs, I logged every detail, the odd expenses she approved, the outrageous management fees, the times she drained Grandma's fund on her own shopping and then passed it off as my recovery costs. Every time I saw Isabella wearing another expensive outfit while boasting of my progress, I reminded myself revenge doesn't have to be loud. You just wait and keep the proof. At every review hearing, I was still deemed stable and making progress under my sister's devoted guardianship. Isabella grew ever more confident, posting on social media about her role as the loving sister who saved her broken sibling. Yet that same social media would unexpectedly offer me my chance. One day I got a message from Emma, Isabella's former college roommate, now a lawyer specializing in guardianship abuse. She'd read my anonymous blog and collected statements from other victims. She volunteered to help me file an appeal, saying 9 years of guardianship is more than enough for any adult. We need to set a precedent. We coordinated in secret. I sent her every piece of evidence, every scan, my hidden journal. Even those strange expense lines Isabella thought no one would notice. Marcus, Sarah, and other former colleagues, Isabella had ruined, all provided sworn statements. Emma stood before the court in my place, dismantling each absurd management fee Isabella had embezzled. For the first time in nearly a decade, I held my head high in court, no longer a passive pawn. Emma did the impossible. She persuaded the judge to reopen my case, to investigate the trust fund's origins, and most critically, to question the true motive of this supposedly ideal older sister. When the court finally revoked Isabella's guardianship, I stood quietly in the chamber, feeling like I'd stepped into another world. No one rushed to embrace me, no impassioned family speech followed, but I didn't need any of that. My greatest victory wasn't reclaiming the money, most of which Isabella had already spent, but winning back my autonomy, reclaiming myself. Those early days of freedom felt surreal. I was shocked to buy my own coffee, to sign a lease, to plan my weekend sketch without seeking permission. Occasionally, I'd spot Isabella online still living her flawless life. still touting financial responsibility and sacrifices for family. To many, she may remain a role model, but to me, she is simply a memory of a storm that ravaged my life, leaving devastation and a victim who refused to stay down. I realized I didn't need a Hollywood-style happy ending. All I needed was the right to decide for myself to start over with every scar and lesson intact, and that was enough. I began painting again. My first works were understood by no one but me, but each stroke was part of my rebirth. I took a job at a nonprofit, supporting those abused by guardianship, helping them find a voice, compile real evidence, and reclaim hope. Someone once asked me, if you had the chance, would you ever forgive Isabella? I smiled and replied, perhaps I owe her thanks. She taught me the greatest lesson. True power doesn't lie in controlling others, but in reclaiming freedom for yourself, even if it comes late. If you've ever felt like nothing more than a shadow in someone else's story, remember, real light doesn't come from those who impose upon you, but from the resilience you nurture in your darkest days. And finally, to anyone silently enduring, you are not alone. And one day, even the darkest night must give way to your own light. My story might sound like a movie script, but it's the reality for so many trapped in a legal prison built by family and the system. If any part of this journey resonates with you, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you won't miss future true Reddit Reads episodes, where we'll uncover more drama-filled, inspiring stories of resilience. See you in the next video.